So today I'm going to talk about one of the things that you may consider. That is, how to start exploring new areas and how to be comfortable with it, and why is it important. And you know, a couple of years ago here at UT Camp, we talked about the ways of overcoming the crisis the industry is in. In a sense, Joseph has already mentioned that. Classic translation as such is transforming. Now you have to create content, or you have to edit machine translation, or you need to learn new skills and transform yourself. But this is not the only thing you can do. Actually, there are many things, and we talked about two major trends there, namely diversification and specialization. And you know, it's not tireless self-promotion. I'm just trying to remind you what we talked about so that we can go further and discuss things you can do not today, but tomorrow. So first of all, back to the future part 2. And by doom, I'm not meaning the COVID crisis. I'm meaning the need to transform the industry, the need to transform yourself, the need to find something new, something exciting, something that will bring you both some money and some enjoyment in the future. So what can we do in terms of diversifying our skills? I mean, we outlined a whole number of things. What you can do, you know, here you can start doing content creation, as Joseph mentioned. There's an immense need for that all around the world in multiple languages. You can do e-learning, whatever. You can train artificial intelligence, and we'll talk about it later. Or you can do quality assurance. So that's one thing. You go sideways. You explore new areas. The other thing is specialization. That is, find something where you are especially good, or where you can do a couple more steps, learn something, and figure out how to reduce the field, how to make sure that there is much less competition and you can charge higher rates, or you can be in high demand. So these are the two approaches. And here, once again, we considered multiple things. You can see here, and one of them, at least for our company, was quality assurance again, because we thought, okay, we invented a whole new methodology and everything. So now I'll just mention it very, very briefly so that we could go further and think about things that we could do in the future, not today. So first of all, remember, it's time to go outside of the sandbox before the sandbox becomes quicksand. Because we really want to enjoy ourselves, we really do not want to be poor, we do not want to be competing for one and the same job with 100 other translators or suppliers or whatever. Absolutely not. And we want to be excited about it. It should be something truly interesting. So, revisiting quality assurance. What we talked about a couple years ago, very briefly, we realized that just counting stupid errors like grammar errors or dual spaces or broken tags and strings is totally wrong. It's not what's important for your overall impression of the content. And I'm using the word content because it's not always text. It could be audio, it could be a video, it could be a game, it could be an e-learning course or whatever. So it's not always a text. So we put forward a 3D hybrid concept. There are two holistic factors that apply to bigger parts. Think of it like paragraphs or documents or articles. One is holistic adequacy. That is, how good is the translation in conveying the meaning and the message of the original statement. The second one is holistic intelligibility. That is how easy it is to consume this content, that is to read the message or to watch the video or to listen to an audio track. How quickly do you grasp the meaning? Do you need to reread or re-listen it several times in order to figure out what somebody wanted to talk about? And of course, there is the third component, as usual, that we call atomistic, because it's located at the segment level, at the level of the sentences, strings, or whatever, where we have all those classical things like grammar errors, spelling errors, wrong terminology, broken tags, and all that stuff. So that's how we started. We created this, and it was a great model and a great approach for measuring translation or localization quality. And then there is a big but. And that's how we started to think into the future. What else can we do that would be in high demand? And what else can you do that would be in high demand in the future? So, from this quality triangle, that is holistic adequacy, holistic intelligibility, and atomistic error level, we need to go somewhere else, beyond the sandbox. So let's think about it. Okay, why do I really love the astrolabe? Well, first of all, it was a great tool that allowed medieval sailors to navigate the seas. It was the first time ever that they could risk sailing somewhere not seeing the coastline, actually. The second thing is that we also need a modern-day, today's astrolabe to navigate the ocean of future opportunities and the oceans of quality. We need something to measure quality of everything going far beyond translation. Just think about it. There are tons and tons and tons of original content. And it could be anything. It could be websites, documentation, it could be marketing materials, it could be guidelines, Q&As, and everything. And people publish more and more every day. And this is the fact. And somebody needs to measure the quality of it. How effective is your marketing? How good is your documentation? How attractive is your website? So somebody needs to measure it. And not very many people truly know how to do that. Also, it's communications. It's oral communications, how managers at the bank or at any other organizations are communicating with clients. How efficient is that? How efficient is your sales process? How well are your marketing people doing? And all of this has to be measured because someone needs to know why this person performs better than the other person, right? So actually, there is a multitude of areas where it would be great to be able to measure quality in some structured way so that we could produce tangible results. Okay, so then we thought, okay, can we measure the quality of almost anything based on the original model we developed? Well, the good thing is that the answer is positive. Yes, we can. Well, I know that to those who used to live in the United States, it reminds of the Obama-era slogan where Obama said that, yes, we can change something. But it's not only politics, we can change something in our industry. So here, first of all, the quality triangle methodology I briefly mentioned earlier, yes, it's universally applicable, and it's applicable with very minor adjustments to the original content as well. And I'll just show you how, but it's just the first tiny step, and then we'll go further. So, intelligibility, holistic. How clear the message is, how easy it is to consume and understand. It's exactly the same for original content. Somebody has written a leaflet for marketing purposes, and it's still the same. How clear is that, right? Well, maybe will need just to replace a single thing, because in some cases, especially when it's content targeted at users and at consumers, we're not interested in the clarity, but we are interested in a slightly different thing. How attractive is that, right? How engaging the content is. So it's the same, or more or less the same coordinate. It's either intelligibility or engagement. The second part is more challenging. Adequacy, as you can imagine, only applies to translated or localized content, because we are comparing the original to the translation or to the localization. Well, it didn't take long to realize that we can replace it with another criterion, and we would be fine, and we will be measuring exactly what people need. That is, just replace adequacy with relevance or with informativeness. That is, how relevant this information is for the area, for the goods, for the website you are researching, or how actually informative it is. And atomistic errors, well, all those grammar mistakes, links not working or everything, they stay the same always. It's just a different type of errors. Okay, let's stage a mental experiment. And let's try and think of assessing this presentation. I'm presenting the content in English. And there is translation. And these people who work very hard and who are always underappreciated or unnoticed, they stay in the back. So just consider this. Okay, so you are assessing how well I am presenting this content. So first of all, how intelligible is it? How engaging is it? Is it interesting to listen? How well do I present the content? When you're assessing the translator's work, if you're listening to the translation, you're thinking, okay, what are you thinking? How intelligible is this? How easy it is to consume? How easy it is to understand? It's a slightly different thing, but you measure a global factor. The second global factor, when you're thinking about translation, you are thinking of how well these translators, once again, hardworking and always underappreciated, how adequately are they translating my speech? That is, are they talking about the same things as I'm talking? With me is how informative is it? How relevant is it? Is it what you wanted to hear? Does it bring any knowledge on the table? Would you like to consider this topic in the future? Atomistic quality, it's the same. It's whether the translator makes any grammar mistakes or they stop at an opportune moment or something, or whether I have some botched visual effects in this presentation, or I'm making a grammar error or something like that. Now, the simple part. So direct applications of the new approach that you can use, not only we can use, is that we can be completely scalable. We can mostly limit QAs to holistic only because clients are not ready to pay for it first. They do not want to pay a lot of money. They do not want to spend a lot of time. And also, they want the results quickly. So, oral and video communications. You're ready to do that. It means sales rep, customer interactions, presentations, and many other things. Also, original materials that companies publish on the web, that companies do their marketing, and all that stuff. So here, you can apply the same methodology and immediately start measuring the quality of immense quantities of their content. But this is just the first step. Think about it. All companies want to know how well are they preparing their materials. But they haven't got the ready methodology. They haven't got the ready scales. They haven't got the metrics, and they haven't got the people who can do it professionally. That's where you can start. But let's go further. So actually, traditional quality assurance, that's what I was talking about. It works well for some types of material, and it works very well for uniform material, where content overall, you just apply some quality criteria, holistic or atomistic, you produce one or more quality ratings, and you're good. You log all issues if you want. That works well. And the goal is either to evaluate what they already have, they created the content or they translated the content, or, well, I would say you will think it bizarre, but that's the reality of our world. The other one is supply performance, because sometimes they have translators or they have content creators or writers, and they want to assess the quality of their work. And that's the reality. And they ask a third party to do this assessment. So this is the quality. So generally, what do we get with the classical QA? We get the general error rating, and typically we say, okay, it's passed or it failed or something like that. And first, we learn on mistakes, hopefully, or we fix issue and republish the content. That's what we do. That works for the classic QA, but that by far doesn't cover the multitude of all materials you can come across. And many materials nowadays, actually a bigger part of them, have nothing to do with this. Why? Well, because the traditional QA, we talked about it, it's generally only when the content is uniform. But let's dig deeper. So what the problem is? So first of all, when the content is not uniform, for instance, let's consider you are assessing articles. The article needs to be structured, or it could be an ad. It should be structured. It should have a tagline that is catchy enough and short enough and informative enough. Then it has some quick abstract. Then it has some technical data. Then it compares it to whatever has been done by your predecessors. So it's a structured document, and there are many areas where you need to assess it. And second, the publishing means, because not everything is published as documentation, as marketing leaflets. Many other things exist in this world that are quite different. So let's talk about them. So first of all, it's complex content, just the articles or private ads or whatever. And second, it's huge volumes of unrelated content created by millions and millions of people. Does it sound familiar? And changes very, very quickly. Moreover, in this case, we're not interested in fixing anything. There is no time for that because new content is created. I mean, who cares? Or those people are not ready to introduce changes. They are ready to write their new content in a different manner. So what are we talking about? We're talking about social platforms that, well, their closest equivalent from the past is the graffiti on the walls and fences. And online marketplaces where people publish their ads, and both big manufacturers and private people who are selling something. These are huge content generators. You cannot even imagine how much content is published there. But, so first of all, what's the difference? A lot of this content is created by non-professionals. They are not professional writers. They are not professional content creators or marketing people, much of it. A huge part of it, and it's a fact, is generated either by machine translation or by artificial intelligence. It was not even written by a human. Plus, there is almost no control. The platforms, they only do superficial control. If they find some swear words or they have some relatively lax rules, they can delete something further on if they find it offensive, but that's it. I mean, in a sense, there is no marketing department, there is no publishing department, there is no project manager there because the content is absolutely kind of living on its own. I mean, it's created by millions of people simultaneously and nobody fixes it. They create new ads. So, examples, private ads. And I'll use, in this speech, I'll use a matchmaking website where you are publishing an ad. And we'll analyze and we'll figure out how we can assess quality of this ad. And say product listings for online marketplaces. Once again, millions of them created by whoever wants to create it, and that's it. But the interesting part about it is that actually these websites, whether it's a matchmaking website or it's an online marketplace, they really want the products to sell or people to get matched. Because you are paying them money and because the sellers pay them a percentage of the sale. So they need these goods to sell. So they're very much interested in improving the quality of your content. They really need it to be higher, to be more uniform, to be better, to be more attractive. But they need a methodology, they need an approach that would enable them to measure it quickly, efficiently, and kind of scientifically. So let's talk about it. What can we do here? So the QA model evolution. So first of all, the most important thing for a translator is to start approaching it from a different angle. Forget that you're a translator. Consider whatever you're reading or watching or listening to as just content, as a consumer or an expert. So you're judging it, or you are thinking of purchasing it, or you are thinking of digging deeper or opening this ad. Second, the quality triangle that I described earlier, it transforms into a quality polygon. Why? Because there are considerably more factors, and they're very different. Because we're talking about structure, about the catchiness, say, of the tagline, about the presence of particular selling points, or the presence of references to previous work, and much, much more. So there are considerably more factors to consider. And actually, when you're judging this content, you are judging it based on the multitude of all those factors, not just a particular one. Think about product listings, private ads, scientific articles, anything like that. And you evaluate all of this in parallel. And the metrics need to be goal-oriented. Why? Well, first of all, because depending on the goal, you use a different approach. Because you have a different structure of the quality assurance, you use different criteria. And you produce different results. And also, you'll need to replace the error typology. Nobody is interested in errors. They are interested in quality. They are interested in assessment. So we replace them with quality categories and traditional severities, that is, it's a terrible mistake or it's just a minor thing. We replace them with quality scales. Well, it sounds very scientific, so I tried to represent it graphically for you. Okay, so that's what we had, the quality triangle. And now it becomes a quality polygon. So, you know, the apexes are marked by what we call the quality factors. So here I used a system that includes only 5 of them. It's quality of art pieces and videos, familiar, understandable, quality of the language, quality of the structure, informativeness, that is, how well does it represent the content and the topic and everything, and appropriateness, which is sometimes relevant, whether the language is appropriate for the topic you describe, whether you're using the right terminology, aren't you using swear words in articles or something like that. And when you're actually measuring it, instead of severity, you're using quality scales, whether it's excellent, very good, good, or absolutely terrible. Well, it's not that hard. Okay, I've added another graphic so that it's a little bit easier to consume. So that's the old one. We had holistic intelligibility or engagement as one coordinate, adequacy or informative as another, and then, you know, atomistic quality, where we're looking at each, say, translated sentence, and we're saying, okay, this one is clean, nothing to mark there. Here we maybe log a couple of mistakes, each with a severity level and something. Now, in the new reality with the created content, what we do is we have a polygon, we have a number of factors that we measure, that is, in here, structure, language, informativeness, appropriateness, whatever. It could be a different thing for a different area. But it's always you select a certain number of quality factors, and then there are two approaches. Either you measure the quality level from excellent to terrible, or you come forward with a diagnosis because your client wants it. What to do with this? Is it perfect, good as is, we should leave it? Or we need to proofread it and then publish it. So think about your matchmaking ad. So for instance, your photograph looks perfect there. It's relevant. You provided all the formal data, that is age, well, maybe you didn't provide it, but height, weight, whatever. Then you provide your interests, and it's part of the structure, and the structure is good, but maybe you were not so creative at writing it. So whoever is managing the website, and they really need you to pay them so that your ad gets some responses, and they come up with a diagnosis, okay, we just proofread it, edit it a little bit, and it can be published, and then the chances of people noticing your ad and replying to it, they increase. And it's good because we're getting more money as a matchmaking website. So that's the other real-life scenario, so either or. Okay, so by goal, what are the interesting goals that we can come forward with? First of all, it's the decision-making. That's where we need to analyze huge number of articles. It could be ads on the matchmaking website, as I mentioned. It could be goods description on an online marketplace. It could be articles that whoever publishes on some network. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, we want a quick diagnosis. That is, this ad can be left as is. This one needs to be put down immediately because the language is not appropriate and reworked completely. This one needs just a little editing that we can do in-house, and it's still good. This one is good, but the art pieces are bad, so we need to fix them. That's the first approach. Second, statistical analysis. Say when an online marketplace wants to figure out how many ads they have written perfectly, attractive, good, well-structured, and with enough information to make the decision and to purchase the goods or services, how many of them are completely terrible and you cannot understand the word and it's been translated poorly and it's been presented poorly and the graphics are terrible, and moreover they point to somebody else's online workplace because they were actually stolen. And finally, for artificial intelligence training, you need an absolutely different approach. Why? Because AI cannot read your comments. It's not interested in them. It cannot fix errors because it's not the AI, it's the engineers who are behind the engine who are fixing the errors. That is, they are fine-tuning the algorithms. And here, you need to, first of all, address a small area because they cannot fine-tune everything and they cannot fix anything. And you need to be very, very specific because they are fine-tuning the algorithm on the run. So it's a totally different thing. And now I'm just provided some examples that can unleash your imagination and maybe create your new engagement, your new skill, something that you would offer in the future to your clients. That is, we can use it, say, for AI training, and we'll talk about it in a second, for transcreation, that is machine translation and AI, and for complex materials. So let's start with AI. You know, most of you know AI as something extremely annoying when you try to log into a website and suddenly it shows you a number of pictures and asks you, do you see, where do you see a traffic light, or where do you see a bicycle? Actually, when you're answering these questions, when you're tagging the rectangles, you're actually training AI, unsuspecting. So the thing is, you are helping them to train it, but it's not everything about it. And you know, there is a very popular meme here, I'll just read it. To complete your registration, please tell us, does the image contain a stop sign? Please answer quickly because our self-driving car is almost at the intersection. So, actually, training AI is not everything and always about recognizing stop signs of bicycle at intersections. It's also about comparing versions created by AI or edited by AI, created by a human being or edited by a human being. So in a particular area, we created a metric that was improving the artificial intelligence tool, something like Grammarly, that improves your language automatically. Whatever you're writing, a matchmaking ad or an article or a goods description. And there we were creating intelligibility, adequacy, and atomistic factors, but because it was AI, we used a very fine structure. Normally a linguist, I mean a normal translator like yourself, you would mark an error as linguistic, whatever it is. I mean, it's a grammar error or a capitalization error, or you haven't put a space there, or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just a language error, trivial, stupid language error. Here, we need to distinguish between grammar, spelling, capitalization, typography, or wrong word selection because the engineers fine-tune the algorithm. So we need to be very specific, very detailed, and we address a very tiny fraction of everything that's needed, but it helps them. So you just create a metric that's slightly different from what you used, and it becomes useful for all those creating AI tools that are editing or authoring our texts. The other thing is blind empty QA. The interesting part of it, maybe you didn't suspect it, but when you're dealing with online marketplaces, a lot of the content in foreign languages is not actually translated. It's transcreated by artificial intelligence, or sometimes it's machine translated without any editing. And the publishers, they know one thing. You should not even approach it like translation. Nobody cares about it. What people really care, is it good enough in this target language? You should not approach it like a translator. You're just thinking, okay, I'm looking at the tagline. Whether it makes sense, whether it's attractive enough so that you open the ad and consider buying the good. They do not care whether it's an adequate translation of the original. That's it. So when you're doing a QA of this thing, you're just comparing the actual ad in the target language to the tagline. And if it's adequate, if it sounds good, if it's catchy enough, it's good. And you only use the source in order to figure out the adequacy part. You do not compare it. You do not even analyze it as translation. That's another actual use. And you know, online marketplaces, they sell millions of goods every day, and there is a lot of work there, believe me. Finally, articles, matchmaking websites. For each ad, you need to analyze the structure, the informativeness, the quality of art pieces. You need to place a really good photo of yourself, maybe on some fancy background, maybe without it. Appropriateness, language. You should not be very explicit because otherwise it violates the rules. And we need to assess them very quickly against all these criteria. And then we evaluate each and figure out, okay, this one is excellent, so the photos you provided are excellent, the structure is excellent, but the language, we should edit it a little bit, and this can be done by this website. You shouldn't even bother. And in some other cases, they say, no, we cannot publish this ad, you need to rewrite it or redo it completely. So these are just the scenarios. So you can, not only we can, but you can assess the quality of almost anything, just making this small, maybe medium step towards, say, free thinking. Just as Joseph said earlier, if you extend your comfort zone a little bit, if you think that this is good, this is comfortable, you can master it, you can offer it, you can work with clients. There is considerably more original content in the world than translated content. There is a huge need to assess the quality of all those articles, ads, goods, whatever. You should just be more active. You need to try to participate in this whole new movement. And it's not what people are doing today, they're just starting, but it's what they will most probably do tomorrow. So, the methodology, and I described you everything, and this presentation will be published, and the speech will be published. It's public, available to you freely. Just try to mention the authors. Will really appreciate that. Well, of course, it's not so easy. You'll need to think of your own criteria. Once again, I've provided some good examples, but you'll need to select the criteria properly, organize them into a metric. Sometimes you'll need to create a small hierarchy of these criteria if there are plenty of them. Write instructions for reviewers. This is the real tricky part, because you really need everyone who reviews it and who assesses the quality to understand your goal, to understand the process thoroughly, to understand how exactly they need to measure the quality for each and every article, because if they do not understand it perfectly, then they'll produce a mess instead of quality assurance, and the results will not be useful to anyone. So, it's time to extend your comfort zone. It's time to sit outside the sandbox. Because the sandbox, the translation sandbox, even the machine translation editing sandbox is getting overcrowded. There are too many of us there, and we're competing against each other fiercely. And it doesn't help us when it comes to rates or when it comes to getting projects or something. And we're engaging in absolutely useless price wars or whatever. Think about other areas. Think of extending your comfort zone, and maybe this will really help you in the future, because we really need to be a step ahead of something. And this is one more thing here. Just as Konstantin mentioned, or Joseph mentioned, if everybody at conferences is talking about machine translation and editing MT, then it's not the future, it's the present. And we need to think about the future to be competitive, to stay interested, to stay energized. Thank you so much indeed for your patience. I really appreciate it. You're a great audience. Thank you. Okay.
Дякую, Леоніде. Запитання?
Questions? There is a question.
I thought everybody is so tired that nobody is going to ask a question.
Well, I suppose your presentation was meant for questions and to be informative and attractive, right? So you have the result here. Thank you very much. It was really engaging and challenging. I would like to ask a question from the point of view of complex writing, that is technical writing, because I'm also a technical writer. It's really very interesting, your matrix, the way you assess quality. And I would like to have another example, apart from the matchmaking one, of how should we define this criteria of informativeness, for example, or relevance? Because should it be by field? Okay, I'm a technical writer in the nuclear energy field. So how do I assess that what I write or my colleagues write is informative enough? Is it by certain keywords, or should it be by presence of nouns, of engaging verbs, or Could you be more specific about this? Because I would really like to introduce such a QA matrix.
Well, actually, as a
Thank you.
person who's doing this in practice for multiple big names in the industry, I mean, we've already started doing this, as you can imagine. I'll tell you that this is a great question, because this is exactly where the hell is hiding. It's in this detail. How do you create the scale? How do you distinguish terrible from terrific? It's obvious, but how do you distinguish good from very good from just passable or adequate or something? So we have created a number of those scale definitions, and they're very detailed, because without detailed definitions, the reviewers will be helpless and they'll be kind of rating it arbitrarily, more or less. So this is the art of addressing the field. One cue that I can give is that these are generic enough. They should not be field dependent. What depends on the field are other criteria. That is, you can say, okay, if it's, say, nuclear energy, you need to be specific about this, or this should be absolutely present, or whatever. For instance, in selling ads for the products, there should be a number of selling points expressing very quickly and closer to the top of the ad, I mean prior to all the details, what are the specific reasons why you should buy this. Because this is, say, bright colors, plenty of sizes, unique plasticity, say it's if it's an energy-saving bulb, it's a unique design or something. So the same with nuclear energy. Actually, they're exactly the same when it comes to quality. You define certain criteria that are a must, or that you must measure, and you separate them. But when it comes to, say, intelligibility, or when it comes to engagement or something, these are very generic. So you should write them properly. So the optimal number is 10, from 0 to 9, where 0 is terrible, 9 is perfect. Fewer will not create a statistically representative array, and more are just too hard to distinguish. The second thing, I'll give you a more concrete cue. We will publish 1 or 2 scales online on our website, so that anyone can look and see how they are created. We will not publish all the scales, because there are plenty of them, but you'll have a very good example, a very good sample to start with. I hope I answered your question. Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's a great question, so please find me afterwards, and you'll get a small souvenir for the great question.
Ще запитання?
More questions.
Almost everybody's tried.
Вже майже
Thank you very much. It was very useful for me, because I am just on the first step to create a QA model for our corporate department to evaluate the translation both from outsourced agencies and from our in-office translators. And maybe I have misheard something, but do you envisage to involve the potential or real end users of the content for evaluation process as an expert or not? Because I have just a possibility with my technical colleagues, and they are also evaluating.
Well, you heard right. Well, in our case, because people just want to do it quickly, these are professional people, but I have emphasized that they're actually trying to impersonate end users. They're approaching it as either experts or as potential buyers, potential consumers, not as linguists or as somebody else. Exactly, because they need to approach it like a normal person who's consuming your content or your goods or your services. We can use end users, it doesn't matter. We have a portal that allows our clients to use wherever they want. They can use their own experts, and we just provide the platform and the metric, and we help them with the products or projects. Or we can use our own professional participants who are impersonating the end users, and the reason is we do need to do it quickly. With the end users, there is one problem. They are not obligated to do it quickly, or they are not obligated to do it at all. So that's the only problem. If you have time to collect this feedback, that's a great thing, because that's exactly what matters when you're selling your services or selling goods, or making sure that the content looks better than it used to look. So I'm fully with you here, but our platform, it allows to do it either way. And once again, I'll be more than happy to talk to you about all the details of the solution you may be interested in. Just find me somewhere here. Thanks a lot.